Here's the routing for the ARB Airline. Now don't get confused by this from the locker. This is actually a copper brake line, so that is not part of this. So first thing I want to do is point out that I decided to go with the 90-degree fitting that the owner had. And the reason for that is if it comes straight out and goes up, then I have to make a big loop here and it's just kind of free hanging. Here, I can leave enough slack for the axle to articulate as well as keep it out of harm's way of everything else. Now, when you run these airlines, the one thing you want to make sure you do is you provide chafing protection wherever this airline goes through. Let me turn my light here. So as you're looking right up at this one here, I ran the airline through the bracket that's already there. I took a piece of fuel line and I put it around the ARB line there to keep it from getting chafed. Over here, I decided to tuck the line up around this corner, up through the top, since there's already an existing hole that I could use as a zip tie. But again, chafing protection there, and then it comes around this backside over here. Now, as you're looking up, it comes around the corner. I wish my phone would fit in all this, but you can see how it's routed there. Note, chafing protection there, because this makes a 90-degree, or not quite a 90, but it makes a sweeping turn around that. So I want chafing protection there to keep it from wearing through the line. The rest of it goes in between, boy, this is really difficult to see, but it goes right there over the top side here, and then back up, and then through there, if you can see, which you probably can't, it'll get up to the compressor from there. But you see I have a couple zip ties here, and this is designed to keep it from chafing on this, chafing on that. So use as many zip ties as you need. Moving on to the front axle. The front axle, this is an Ashcroft drop-in center here, and it also used that same 90-degree fitting that I used on the back. I routed the airline. I put a little bit of a lazy loop there to allow any type of movement. Took some big zip ties here to make sure it's not going anywhere. This other line right here, that's the vent for the axle tube. And the best place to run an airline is where they run the vent for the axle tube in most cases. And that's because they'll run it along the control arm. And what that does is that allows movement up and down without affecting the line. So as it runs back here, you're going to see I have it zip tied there, I have it zip tied here. The challenge with this one is you can see how this control arm starts off really thick down here and gets thinner down here. The downside of that is the zip ties could wiggle their way down. Now this one's not going past this big lump here, but this one potentially could. And I have another one back here where it turns up and goes to the compressor. Now speaking of, let me see if I can wiggle my way in here. Where am I at? There I am. Get my light up there. So speaking of right here, you can see another chafing point. So both of these lines, I put the rubber there to keep it from chafing, and then everything goes on and up to the compressor, which is right on the other side of the fender right. Hey everyone, Mike here in the BFH garage. As you can see, I finished the re-gear on the Land Rover Defender. Now I'm going to install an ARB air compressor. I decided to do a different video because this compressor can go across many platforms, so it doesn't matter whether you're in a Defender or whether you're in a Jeep, it doesn't matter. This compressor gets set up the same way. Basically, you need to find room for it. You need to have it oriented the way that it's going to work in that small amount of room you have. You need to run some wires and hook it up to a battery. Same process no matter what vehicle you're in, so I'm going to show you today how to install an ARB air compressor. Let's orient ourselves with the compressor along with all of the parts. The first thing you're going to notice is that, and this is me, I like to work on a good clean work surface. I put this towel down because it's high contrast. I can see parts easily. I'm not confused on where parts may or may not be. I do the same thing when I set up gears. It just makes for a more successful install and a lot less frustration. I can't stress that enough. We're going to start with the compressor. The compressors the ARB makes, they make several different versions. The first version is a basic compressor that comes with your locker. So when you buy two lockers, they either give you one or sell you one cheap. I'm not sure what they're doing now, but anyway, you get a very basic compressor. And don't get me wrong, it is very well designed and it does its job very well. but it's designed to actuate your air lockers and nothing else. That's what it does. It does it very good. There's nothing wrong with that compressor. However, some people like to upgrade to the next level of compressor, which is going to be this one here, and this is a high output compressor. The difference between this compressor and the other compressor is this one gives you the option to add a fitting so you can attach an air hose. That is very, very useful when coming off the trail and you want to air up your tires if you're aired down. And what it basically does, it will take place of your power tank, your CO2 cylinder, gets rid of all that. It will do the job for you. And that's really important, A, because the CO2 cylinder or your power tank, that's additional weight in the vehicle that I personally like to shed weight. And it also doesn't take up that space in your vehicle. So that can be done with this compressor right here. Now, ARB makes a third compressor, which is a very high output compressor. Basically, it takes this black part here, which is your compressor. It puts two of them on this on a different mount, but it takes two compressors. You get this bigger compressor part that will have enough output that you can connect an air hose and actually run air tools, impact wrench, whatever you want to run. Let's bring in a little bit closer, and I'm going to talk about the compressor and all of the components. Let's start with the compressor. So the first thing you're going to notice about the compressor is this blue thing that holds the compressor itself. So this bracket right here is the mounting bracket that attaches to the bracket that attaches to your vehicle. So this gives you a lot of adjustability here. When you see how these are kind of round there, it allows you to tweak and turn this bracket whatever way. And I'm going to talk about how to fit these things inside your vehicle because it does become a problem. So the adjustability about these compressors is just incredible. So keep in mind that you have those kind of round one there where you can turn your bracket whatever way you want. This bracket now mounts to this blue part. These bolts will tighten up right there, and that is what the compressor mounts to. This mounts to the vehicle, the compressor mounts to this. You're going to notice it has these rubber grommets right here, and that is for vibration control and dampening. So this compressor, when it runs, believe me, it's vibrating quite a bit, and that helps to reduce the shock load on the compressor as well as working anything else loose. So when you look at this blue piece here, that is what attaches to that, but what it does, it allows for adjustability. So I want to talk real quick about the adjustability of these compressors. ARB's ingenuity is just absolutely top notch. I love what they've done for this. You're going to learn real quick how much space you can save by adjusting this thing, because when you open up a hood of a Jeep, especially on the Wranglers that have the emissions in there, you don't have a whole lot of room to work with, and adjusting this compressor to get everything to fit in a very compact spot is absolutely key. And ARB, with their ingenuity, they have designed this to allow for the highest level of adjustment. Let me show you. So the black thing here is your compressor. Let's just say that right now the blue clamp piece here is mounted to the clamp that clamps to your vehicle, so that's mounted there. You can take the compressor and you can rotate it back and forth however you need it to fit inside your vehicle. So that's the first part of adjustability. The second part is you can slide it left or you can slide it right. That gives you a little bit more adjustability. Say you have your clamp there and it's down on something, but something's sitting right here, you can take and slide your compressor over and move it out of the way. Really, really like that. Up top now you have your air reservoir. This is adjustable by rotating back and forth, so you can adjust it there. You're going to notice the red cap here, that's where your air fitting and your pressure switch and all that go. This is adjustable separate from the air cylinder. So you can see how everything together gives you a great amount of adjustability, and you can really get these compressors into some tight spots. When you go to put your solenoids on here, they're going to go in each one of these caps right here, and you can make those also swing whichever way you want them to go. Now on top of that, these fittings will rotate sideways too. So if you need your electrical line to go out the other side instead of this side, whatever, you can adjust it however you want. We're going to go through that, and I'll show you how to set this thing up. But this thing is really cool, very, very adjustable. Moving on now, we have an end cap here with the red cap on it just to keep dust out. that is where your air filter goes, screws right in there. We'll wait to do that until the end. You're going to notice this red cap right here. What this is for is to hold. You're going to have a double fitting here. First of all, it can be one of two things. A, you're going to have your pressure switch that screws right in there, but if you opted for the high output compressor, you're probably going to want to put on an air fitting, so you're going to take this adapter here, and basically what that allows you to do is put the compressor air hose fitting on one side, your pressure switch on the other, and then it goes in there. It doesn't matter which side. You can put this one here and the pressure switch up top. It doesn't matter. So that's what that part is. Other fittings we have, you have your quick disconnect fittings here. These are for your 6mm black air lines that come from your locker up to your compressor. These are really slick because you can put your 6mm line in there, and if you need to do maintenance, you can push in while depressing this tab and then pull your line straight back out. So now let's talk about the solenoids real quick. You have a nipple that comes off of here that will attach to the top of this, and like I said, once you get this on here, you could adjust this to wherever direction you need it pointed to and make it fit in that really, really tight, small spot. All right, let's move this out of the way. Now let's talk about the ARB wiring harness. Wiring harness that ARB uses, it's obviously their proprietary harness to work with their system. It comes in two pieces, and the reason for that is you need to get part of this harness through the firewall. So coming in from the engine bay into the firewall, you need to get that through. So that way you can have your switches on the inside. So this side here goes to your battery. You have a fuse right here. You have a relay right here that will plug into here once we get everything installed. But the way this works now, this is all the wire you have to get through everything. So they give you plenty of wire. You get all that set up, get it wire tied out of the way. In the middle here, you're going to notice all these switches. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But when you get all the way to the end here, you're going to see how you have these spade connectors here, and then they have this attached here. These spade connectors go into this piece here, and that is what will attach to this piece right here. This is far easier getting through your firewall than something this big. So that's why they give them to you separately. So get your wire through the firewall first, then you're going to plug them into this based on the position they need to go. And this is the only wire that needs to go through the firewall. They give you plenty of it, so you're going to have to coil it up and wire tie it off out of the way, but you need at least that much room to get it through a firewall. So with that being said, now this plug here will plug into this harness here. Now this is what's going to be inside your vehicle, and they have these all laid out, switch 1, switch 2, isolating switch, very well designed. Just the instructions are really, really clear on hooking up all of these leads to your switches, and everything's going to work. Trying to find a location to mount an ARB compressor can be challenging. In this vehicle here, actually, there is quite a bit of room. I'm actually surprised at areas that I could fit this compressor in. However, the owner has already decided where it's going to go. He already drilled and had the mount mounted, so I took it out. But you're going to see right here, you have the two holes here. Remember, this is the mounting bracket that holds the compressor. This mounting bracket will go right here. So I can already see some of the issues I'm going to have is going to be the air intake right here. This is going to be a potential area of interference. So the adjustability of this compressor is going to be very well utilized in trying to clear all of this here. So I'm going to get this mount mounted here first, then we're going to bring the compressor in, and I'm going to show you how things like this can get in the way and the way that you can overcome that and make everything fit. So mounting the compressor, these two holes right here are what lines up in this bracket. And then these are the screws that will hold it in place. So I need to get this blue clamp mounted to the bracket, and then I can start adjusting everything else where I need it to see where it's going to fit. But I have to have an idea of where I need to get first. So I have to come in from below, rotate things around just so I can get it to fit first of all. And then once I get everything mounted, then I can come back and adjust it as I need to get it to fit where it needs to go. So I'm going to start the first one there, come back, start the other one, and then I'm going to come back and tighten this up. I have the compressor mounted to the bracket. It's just held in place by these bolts. I don't have anything set for final assembly yet because I am just now trying to figure out how I'm going to make this work. So you see how you can rotate this compressor up and down. I'm trying to do this so you can kind of see how this works. If I go too far to this way, you see how much adjustability I have going this way? The problem is I need to put a solenoid there. And if you see the size of this solenoid, you can see that it's not going to fit there very easily. So how am I going to fix that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move it back to the rear. That's a start. And then what I can do is I can rotate this up and down, but I can also rotate the air housing, and that's going to allow me to get it to a point, like for example right there. I could take the solenoid, I can get the solenoid mounted right there, and when it's mounted right there, it will be below this intake and out of the way. And then I also have to decide which way do I want this port to be facing, because that is what is going to be going to the quick disconnect fitting. I have a couple options. I could use this one or I could use the one up top based on my need. So my goal would be to have this solenoid set up in such a way that I can get it pointing this way and then use this sideways hole here to get my air line going straight through there. So if I could have it facing kind of like that, that would be my ultimate goal. Now, don't forget, I have to get another solenoid in there as well. So I have a lot of stuff to put in there with very little room. Now check this out. Remember the air fitting and the pressure switch I talk about? You see how it starts getting in the way of everything. So how do I correct that? Well, I can take the side of the can here. Now you see the red cap there, that's where that's going to screw in. And I could point it back over this way. So now I can have my air fitting sitting straight up like this to where it's easy access, and my pressure switch is out of the way of the solenoids, and I can make it fit there. If I want to adjust it a little bit more upright, I can do that. But to be honest with you, I prefer having it come back like that. It makes for easier access for sure. So what I want to do now is I'm going to play around with this a little bit, get these set up where I think I want them, and then I'm going to snug down the bolts to keep this stuff from rotating, because I know where it's going to need to go. Then I'm going to pull the compressor back out, take it over to the bench, and I'm going to start installing all this stuff as it sits like this. So I'm going to take a few minutes, make sure all this is lined up where I need, move stuff left, right, whatever, get it cinched down just a little bit so it doesn't move, get it over to the workbench, then I will tighten it up so it doesn't move from its position here. Then I'm going to install everything and then reinstall the compressor. Here's my compressor set up in my Jeep. As you can see, not a whole lot of room in there. Actually, that spare battery tray gives you more room than normal. On my old Jeep, before I rolled it, I actually had it mounted to the back side of this bracket here. Worked real well that way because down on my tray, I had all the ABS stuff where I don't have it on this one. So I opted to put it down here on the new Jeep because it fits a lot easier. You can still see some of the interference issues you're going to have to deal with when you're trying to get this thing in there. Now, as you can see, I have my air fitting right there pointing up. Makes it nice and easy when I want to attach it. I plug it in, turn on my compressor, air up my tires, and when I'm done, I come back over, pop it right out, and that is all there is to it. I want to show you another level of adjustability here. So if you look at these solenoids, they both are oriented the same way. The cord's at the same spot. But you're going to notice that my airline fitting that goes in here is pointed this direction. On this one, it's on the backside, pointed in that direction. That gives me airlines going in the opposite direction, which can be an issue. So what I want to do is decide, would I rather have so my airline goes this way underneath the vehicle, do I want my solenoid on this side up facing the can, or do I want it on this side facing away from the can? And what I'm going to opt to do is go with this solenoid here to where it makes my airline go there. So all you have to do is take off the cap, undo your fitting, move it to the other side, and then turn it over, and now I have
both of my solenoids facing the same way. Imagine that cap going on. Both of my solenoids facing the same way, both airlines going out the same way, and it makes for a good, clean install. Everything is dressed right, it's not interfering with anything. So if you need to move stuff around to make it fit, you can do that. Another option is if you need, for some reason, to turn this sideways, you can do that and make it work as well if you want to send it a different way. So you can adjust these however you want, but this is the way I'm going with it right there. With the compressor pulled out of the vehicle, the very first thing I want to do is tighten these two bolts right here to clamp the compressor clamp down onto the compressor so it doesn't rotate or move in and out. This part right here can still move around. I'm not too concerned because the only thing that tightens all this up is this 1 10mm bolt right there, and I can do that while it's in the vehicle. The nice thing is it gives me an idea of, or the adjustability to move this stuff around and make sure I fine tune everything once it's in. Now, after messing around in there and trying to figure out how I want these solenoids to go, I need them to be pointing the airlines in this general direction right here. So my goal is to take this solenoid, put it right here. Now you can see why I switched the fitting from the one side to the other. Now I'm going to take this solenoid and put it kind of on that angle right there. That way the airlines can get by each other. That keeps them out of the way of everything. And I can adjust this up and down with the can if needed. When I put this stuff together, I am a huge fan of this RectorSeal True Blue. This stuff here, it's vibration resistant paste, and when you put it in there, it makes for a great airtight seal, and then it dries up and it kind of firms up, and I never have problems using this stuff. I've tried using Teflon tape like a lot of other people, and I always tend to find leaks or have leaks. Since I've been using this stuff, I don't have a single leak anymore. I just absolutely cannot say enough about that stuff. So it's kind of like choosing oil, I suppose. If you want to use Teflon tape, that's fine. I'm very particular to this stuff right here. So let me get all these fittings built and done, and I'm going to get these solenoids mounted in there, and we'll come back. One thing I want to mention before I get started putting all this stuff together is when you go to put your solenoids in, it is easy to over tighten and strip out this stuff. So when you feel it start to get firm, you're only going to that next level to get it lined up where you need it. You don't have to crank this on at 100 foot-pounds or anything. You need to get it on there and allow it to be tight. With that being said, if you're orienting your solenoids where one needs to be this way and one needs to be this way, you can see how these things aren't going to be able to turn with the other one in place. So what I recommend then is put the first one in. When you know you're getting close to that last quarter turn, you can leave it out of the way. Then you're going to put your second one in and you're going to rotate it until it's all the way tight. Because when you put this in, this entire thing has to rotate in a circle. And if you're not careful, it can be in the way of that other solenoid. So keep that other solenoid out of the way to where you can still turn this one until you get to that last turning thing, and then you can finish them up the rest of the way once they're in place. First time I ever did compressor in my old TJ, I was putting things in, taking them back out because I didn't realize that one part had to go in before the other. So it could be frustrating that way, but it is a Rubik's Cube. Make sure you get this stuff done in the correct order. With all my connections made now, I still have the ability to move this around. I'm going to go put it back into the Land Rover there and make sure that these fittings are lined up where I need them to go. Now, one thing I want you to know is on these quick disconnect fittings there, they have a rubber O-ring there. These will screw in and you just want to snug them down. You don't need to put the paste on there. And you don't want to over tighten them because you don't want to damage the O-ring on there. So get those on there, snug them up, and then make sure that your line has room to clear this and vice versa. You may need to make some very minor adjustments on how these are angled, but it should be fairly straightforward and simple to do.
Now the hard part, and that is getting all this to fit in there until I can get it up here. So you can see now the way it's set up. You gotta make stuff fit to get in there. So for the time being, I'm gonna turn the solenoids down, turn this air fitting over, so that way I can at least get up here and get these bolts started, and then we could fine tune everything once I get it mounted. As you're looking down in here, you're going to see that I have the compressor mounted. I still have these loose so I can move stuff around. I did make some adjustments after I got it in here. The first thing I did is I took the pressure switch and I rotated it this way so it comes off straight this way. And the reason being is, I'm not sure if you can see that, but I adjusted this solenoid. Instead of having it going out in that direction like I originally wanted to, I changed it to come in on this direction, because what it will do now, when I rotate the can down and move this back over this way, it puts a gap between the solenoid and this fitting here, and I can run an air line in parallel to each other. So the backside air line here, I have a little sample piece here. If I put that in and snap it in, I could run it to where it runs right next to the other solenoid, and those air lines will run parallel right next to each other. I can zip tie them to each other. It's a good, clean install. And the most important part is I don't have it going out the other side and where it's getting the heat from the exhaust constantly. So that'll keep the airlines protected and away from the exhaust, keeps them coming out at a nice little angle. This is set up beautifully. I'm gonna do my little fine tuning now. I'm gonna tighten down the nut on the back side, which will secure the housing and the fitting here. And then I have to put on my air filter on the back side. Then we move on to routing the hoses in, get those trimmed up, put them where they need to go, and then it's on to wiring. With the compressor in, now it's time to move on to wiring. Now, as you go to wire this up, you're gonna see that the wire loom has the fittings for the compressor, the pressure switch, and then one of each of the solenoid. So this part of the wire has to go in this general location, so that way it can connect all that. That means the rest of all of this over here is what goes to your battery. So you have to find a way to route this all the way to your battery. And in the case of this Defender here, this gives me an extra challenge because the battery is actually located underneath the passenger seat. And then what you also need to do is find a way into the cabin via some access in the firewall for this wire. Remember I told you this is what's going to our switches. So basically that's what it's going to look like. This has to go here. This has to find its way to the battery. Those go to the switches. Now, how do you get those switches through the firewall? When you are looking at the firewall, most vehicles, and this one included, you're going to find some sort of rubber grommet type plug. You can use that to get wires through. You can drill a hole in the grommet and get your wiring through and then trace it up to where you need it to go. Very strong word of caution here. It is far easier to pull the grommet out, put it on a bench, drill your hole through it, feed your wires through it, get your wires started on the inside, and then reset the grommet. That'll be a lot easier. Now on this particular TD5 here, there's a grommet back here below this reservoir. I'll take you up and show you here in just a second, but that appears to be what's going to be my best access. I can't say that for sure, but that's what it looks like it's going to be. Usually they have one on each side. I'm not so certain on this particular one. So if you come up here and you look, I don't know if you can see it from here or not. Let's see, right behind that wire. Let me get this light set up for you. So if you're looking right there, that's a grommet that goes into the cabin. So I'm going to try to exploit that a little bit and see if I can access it easily from the inside. If I can, I'll make the wires go through there. If I can't, we're looking for another way in. Once you get your line pulled through the firewall,
make sure that you take and you get that grommet put back into position. Let me see if I can get it here. So you see the grommet back there where the line goes through there behind that hose. You want to get that installed all the way. Make sure you have the lip go around the firewall so it just doesn't fall right back out. You can take some silicone and silicone where the wire goes in to make sure you're not getting any water in there. And I would also leave that wire coming out on a downward angle. It acts as a drip loop, so if water does get up on the wire, it doesn't drip into the cab, it drips away from it. Now that I've established access for the owner via the grommet right there, I can take these wires, and he wants them to come up through that little thing here. He already has a switch panel with the switches on it, and that will recess right there to some degree. So I want to pull enough wire to where he can have wire to pull out, make his attachments, and then put it back inside there. He will handle the rest of that. But getting the wire into the cab, you know what, it can be a challenge. This one works out perfectly because it was easy access and it comes right up to where that's at. The only thing I have to do is get the wire pulled a little bit more and fish it up there. And I got to look out for my good little friend right there. With the wiring harness pulled through, now I need to make the connection to the cab side of the harness. You remember that this wasn't connected because we had to pull it through that fitting in there. So now I'm going to take and attach these wires to this fitting so it can plug into here. Easiest way to do that is to take your plugs, line them up, and then look at your wiring, green with green, yellow with yellow, black, black, red, red. Get those clipped in, and then this harness will clip right together. Once you get these wires pushed in, take your connection, click it in, and you can kind of start putting that harness back in that direction here. So before we start attaching our switches, you need to make sure that you run your ignition wire here. That's the red and yellow, so that will go to whatever wire is turned on by your ignition. And then your blue wire is your illumination wire. You could attach that to another illumination wire, piggyback off of that, and when you turn your lights on, your switches will light up as well. Now, when it comes to the switches, you have switch 1, switch 2, and then your isolation switch here. They have everything marked. This goes for your compressor. These go for your actual locker switches. Now, when you do this, it is really, really simple. Everything here is color coded. And the only reason I'm not doing it now is because he has other electrical work he's working on right here, and I can't tuck this thing back up right now. So I'm gonna let him finish this out. But for you, it is really simple. ARB and their directions there. Here's a ARB switch. This one's for the front locker. It's got 5 pin connectors there, or spade connectors there. You find the switch you're using for the front locker, and you're going to notice that these 2 switch wires have different colors. One has red, one has green. So that'll tell you which one goes to the front locker, which one goes to the rear locker. Make sure you get those plugged in appropriately. Real simple. When you're going to plug it into, make sure that you feed it through your little bracket that you're going to use to hold your switches first, and then everything else will tuck up nice and neat. Real easy, real clean install. Now what we need to do is we need to plug in our relay, but we also have to find a ground and a way to get our battery connection made. Now the battery connection, like I said, it's right over here underneath the front seat. As we run the wires to the battery box, what you want to do, I was going to originally go through that other grommet, but I'm not going to put a big old hole in that grommet, so I drilled a hole right next to it, installed another grommet that matches that wire better, and it goes right through. Nice clean install. The grommet will protect the wires from rubbing and chafing on the metal, possibly shorting out. Runs right through to the battery box. Just make sure that you pull your seat, you take a look to make sure you're not going to be drilling in anything, especially a battery wire, and that you get a good clean install that way. If you look at this one here, it darn near just looks factory. Make sure that you also take and you zip tie your cable to other items. That way you don't have to worry about that cable catching on anything, snagging, and getting ripped out of there. Now a view from the top side here. So where it comes into the cable box is right there. And let me see if I can get it where it comes in through the grommet there. So you see right there coming in through the grommet, nice clean install. Now as you come up back this way, always make sure that I leave a little bit of wiggle room with that wire in case for some reason you have to trim it back, put a new connector on or whatever. We have plenty of wire. It's not tight, it's not getting pulled, it's not going to chafe. Make my connection to the negative terminal there. Make my connection to the positive terminal there. Our ARB is now connected to the battery. All right, that does it for the compressor install. Very straightforward. If you ever get stuck, just look at the directions. I know as guys, we just don't do that. Part of the reason I made this video, but it is very straightforward. The key part of that is to look at the directions and see which color wire goes to which spot on the switch. They have to be in a certain order in order for that whole thing to work. So had fun on this project. A lot of fun doing the ARB install in the rear as well as adding the compressor. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and stay tuned, more coming.